Hey guys, in our last video, we took a look at a service called URLs that allows us to shorten URLs, but also get information about how many clicks those URLs are getting, where those clicks are coming from, those sorts of things. And in that video, I actually made reference to another service like it called Shlink, and that's actually what we're going to take a look at in today's video. One of the things I've never really talked about on this channel is that in 2016, I got really sick and was hospitalized for multiple months.
But wanted to let you know I'm out of ICU. I'm in a step-down unit.
During that time, I had a bit of a medical complication that caused a bit of brain damage that affects my ability to process information, what we would call normally. Since then, I've tried to fill my time doing things that help stimulate my brain to help keep me sharp. And that's why I'm actually super excited that Brilliant sponsored this video. Lately, I've been going through their logic course and have really enjoyed learning more about critical thinking skills that are not only the basis for mathematical reason, but it also helps me kind of go through my daily mental exercises. The logic course gives you problems to solve with all of the details you need to solve it visually, and we all know that the best way to learn anything is by doing it hands-on. And that's why I love that Brilliant has thousands of different courses for all kinds of different people, with new courses being added regularly. To get started, visit brilliant.org/dbtech or click the link in the description down below. And the first 200 of you to do that will get 20% off your annual premium subscription. Again, thanks to Brilliant for sponsoring this video. So when I first started looking into Shlink, I was missing something and I couldn't figure out what it was until I started doing some more research and digging through whatever I could find online. And then it dawned on me that by default, Shlink doesn't come with a graphical user interface, any kind of dashboard in order to log in and manage it. It was kind of by default built to work with command line. And then I realized, oh, I can install a GUI, a graphical user interface, and have that dashboard that I'm more familiar with, so I can more easily manage my setup and look at the data and that sort of thing. So once I did that, it made a whole lot more sense. And that's kind of what I want to show in this video, is kind of the process of getting this all set up so that you can manage it through a dashboard like we like to do here, but also kind of talk about some of the weird little security things that they have in place so that you can decide how you want to manage your Shlink instance. So here we are on their homepage, and right up here at the top it says the definitive self-hosted URL shortener. If we scroll down, we can see that there is a web app, and that's what I was missing at first. But if we scroll down, this is what I was seeing is kind of this command line stuff, and I don't want to do all my stuff via command line. That's just not convenient. But there's a lot of great information here on their website. Of course, that will be linked in the description down below. If we jump over to the actual instance that I have, we're going to take a look at two different versions of the same thing that are currently up and running on my server. The first one is just a local installation here where we've got Shlink up and running, but it is on a local URL, an IP address there. And we can see that we're actually tied to a URL, this link.dnb.wtf. Of course, that dnb.wtf is what we used for URLs as well. But if we take a look here, we can see that we are actually tied to this. If I click that, it's going to take me over to Reddit there like we would expect. And we can see when it was created, the short URL, the long URL. You can do tags if you want to do tags to kind of categorize things for easier finding it later, I guess, if I knew how to use words today. But below that, or next to that, I guess, we've got visits. And of course, it says 2, but if I refresh, now it says 3. And of course, we come over to here, we can actually get view stats, edit the short URL, or get a QR code for that. So I actually kind of dig all of those options there. If we look at the stats, here is the short link that we've got up here, how many visits, when it was created, the long URL. We can sort by time, or we can see by time. Of course, this was a few days ago, and this is today. And basically, each one of these days has got one visit. And that's just me testing over the last few days a few different things. Next to that, we've got context. We can see Windows versus Linux. I'm on Windows right now, but the laptop that I was using when I set this up was Linux. So we've got a little bit of variation there. Of course, now we're on Chrome versus Firefox, again on that Linux laptop. So we're seeing some differences here in these pie charts. References, we've got direct visits. By location, of course, United States, Denver. I'm not in Denver, but it's close enough for what we're trying to attain here. And then, of course, list. We can kind of see everything, again, by the date, country, city, browser, OS, and the referrer. All of that is in all of the stats that are here. And I really dig how that looks. And of course, that is a pre-existing URL that I put in there just for testing purposes. But if we come back to the homepage, if we wanted to, we could do HTTPS dbtechreviews.com, and we'll just do reviews like so, and then we can add tags. We're going to call this my site, and we'll click save. And here we go. Now we've got link.dnb.wtf/reviews. And if we look down here, we can copy that. But if we look down here, now we've got a tag that we didn't have in our previous link that we can see right below that. If I click copy, I can do a new window, pop that open. And there it is. It automatically just routed us over there like you would expect this service to do. But keep in mind that while I'm doing this, I'm on a local IP address, which kind of, it took my brain a minute to process that so that I could understand kind of what was going on here. And basically the back end and the front end are two separate applications. They're two separate Docker containers that kind of work in tandem with each other. So then if we wanted to, we could jump over to here, and here up at the top left, we can see admin.dnb.wtf. And here is my Shlink server. When you come to this URL at first, it's just going to list all of the different servers that you have available set up on this instance. So you can manage multiple backends from one front end, and I kind of dig that. The way that separation at first confused me, but now I kind of appreciate what they've done there, so that you can again manage multiple backends from one interface. So if we click this, it's just going to take us back to the same dashboard that we were just looking at on the IP address. Now, what you may have noticed, and one of the reasons I wanted to bring this up, is that it didn't ask me at any point to log into this. So that's where you've got to be kind of careful about how you want to handle this setup. Now, I'm using Cloudflare tunnels for my authentication, right? So if I come over to my tunnels, here is link, here is admin, and here we can see that my policy for Shlink is based on an IP address. So only the IP addresses that I've allowed access to the Shlink admin will work. That said, I don't have any IP restrictions or any other restrictions on the front end because I want that to be publicly available. I only want to be able to administer it from my IP addresses if I'm doing it from admin.dnb.wtf. So there are some things that you can do to help protect that. Of course, if you're using something like Nginx Proxy Manager, you can also restrict by IP address, or you can restrict by username and password. Of course, you can do that same stuff with Cloudflare if you want to do that. That said, if this is something that you don't want to be able to manage or have the admin accessible to the internet, you don't have to. You can just leave it on an internal IP address like we're seeing here, and then you don't have to worry about anybody trying to get in unless they infiltrate your entire network. You don't have to worry about anybody getting access to your admin because it's not publicly available. So I really, again, when I first got into this, I was kind of confused. I didn't understand what their logic was. And then after I played with it for a couple of days, I got it. I think I get it. I hope I get it. Anyway, I like it now. I didn't before, but now I do. And I'm not saying that I'm going to switch everything over from my existing URLs that I've had up for 3 years over to this. But if I were to want to set something up in the future, I would definitely probably use Shlink versus URLs just because of how versatile it is. And we've only taken a look at this much. So now let's dive over and take a look at some of the other settings. So from here, we're on the overview tab. If we want to, we can list all of our short URLs here. We can see when they were created, the short URL, the long URL, tags, and visits. That's pretty expected, if we're being honest here. Over here, we can click on create a short URL. We can put in the long URL, any tags that we want. We can customize it through titles and slugs, the short code length, the domain. If you had multiple domains set up, again, if you had multiple backends set up with different domains or whatever, you could manage all of that from here, and I really dig that. You can limit the access to the short URL. How many visits can you get? So let's say you're a creator or you're running a contest and it's only the first 500 people can access this link. You can actually control that via this dashboard, and I dig that. You can have it available during certain times. You can make it crawlable. You can forward query parameters on redirect. You can validate the URL. So just to make sure that URL works, it will do that for you before you publish it and realize, oh, I screwed up that URL. It will validate it for you, and I appreciate that. Or you can also see if that URL already exists in your system. It'll validate that as well. Once you've selected all of this, you can click Save and publish your new shortened URL. Below that, of course, we've got tags over here on the left. And of course, we've just got this one tag for right now, but you can add more tags as you're adding additional URLs. And of course, we can manage domains. Right here, I've just got this one, and we can, of course, it says, congratulations, this domain is properly configured. And of course, we can view stats for that domain, edit redirects for that domain. We can edit the server down here. Here is the name that I gave it, the URL, and the API key. We'll talk about API keys here in a little bit because we're going to need two of them. We're going to need one to connect our admin, our backend, to our front end. We actually need an API key to authenticate the two so that we can manage them properly. And then when we're actually looking at, let's come back over to here. When we're looking at these and we actually want to see the stats on them, right? We come to stats and we can do by location where we're getting country and city. We actually will need a MaxMind API for the geolocation aspect of this. They're free. You can go get one. Of course, I'll show what that looks like when we get to the actual installation part of things. But just know that there are a couple of API keys you'll need. Again, the MaxMind for the geo stuff, as well as the API key to connect the front and back end containers. So there's that. And of course, that's kind of everything over here. We can remove the server if we wanted to do that. And then if we come up to the top right, we've got settings and servers. Let's look at servers first. Again, we've got our local and our managed servers, just like we saw a moment ago. If we click on settings, we've got general, dark theme. Of course, if you've watched this channel for any time, you know that I prefer the dark theme. We've got that. We can enable or disable real-time updates. I don't know why you would want to do or disable that unless you had a very high traffic server that wasn't able to tabulate things fast enough. You might have it do it, intermittently. You can see, do it immediately or in minutes. You can kind of say, just update this every 10 minutes or whatever the case is. Up here at the top, we can see short URLs. We can request validation on long URLs when creating new URLs. We can make all new short URLs forward the required params to the long URL. And then you can, let's see, tag suggestion, search mode, suggest tags starting input, including input, so you can change that. Short URLs list, we can decide how we want to sort those. I kind of dig that. And then other items up here, default display mode, cards or list, default ordering for tags list, order by tag, URL, or visits, and then visits show the last 30 days. So very, very intuitive once you kind of understand the setup process. So with that said, let's actually take a look at the setup process so we can see kind of what goes in to getting this set up with a front end and a back end and a database. Okay, so here we are in Portainer. Of course, this is where we spend a lot of time when we're deploying containers here on the channel. We've got our Docker Compose here that we've put together. We've got a version 3. We've got some services under here. The first one is Shlink. Below that, we've got a database, and below that, we've got a web client. You're going to want all three of those in order to get the full experience, in my opinion, anyway. If we start up at the top, our first service, the Shlink, the image will be, Shlink.io. It's just a stable version of Shlink there. Restart policy of always. I think that's a great one for this particular setup. Our container name is Shlink backend. We've got some environment variables of a time zone, a default domain. Of course, we've got that right here. Is HTTPS enabled equals true? If you're going to do that, you probably should. Our GeoLite license key, again, this is that MaxMind account. So here we are on my MaxMind account, and it says you're using our free data, because I am. I'm not paying for anything right now. And if I come over, I can manage my license keys. If I come over to here, there are some keys right there, and there's my license key. You can kind of see part of them. You'll only ever see them once, so jot them down until you're absolutely sure you don't need to have it jotted down anymore. We can see when it was created, when it was last used. We can edit and delete these. We can generate a new key. So that's kind of all you'll need to do there is just generate a key over here. We'll just generate a key here. We'll call it license 6. We're going to say, will this key be used for geo IP update? I'm going to say yes. And then I'm going to use version 3.11 or newer with that first option there. I'm going to click confirm. Right there is my license key. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to jump over here and just drop this in here. None of this is going to matter. I don't care if you see this. So below that, we've got a driver, a database driver of Maria, a username, a database name, a database password, and database host. Don't change the driver. The user is fine, I think. Yeah, the database user and password. If you change them up here, make sure you change them down here as well. Don't leave the password, at least. Don't leave the password as it currently is of password. That's just bad practice. But again, this is for demonstrative purposes. So Below that, we've got a depends on the database, which of course is our next service down here. And then we've got a port of 8987 mapped over to 8080, just because that's what I did. And of course, if you need to change that, I think by default, these were both 8080. But if you're already using port 8080 here, change this to something else, but only change at the left side there. Again, our next service here is the database. We're using a Marie database version 10.8. Again, an always on that restart policy, just in case something happens. Server reboots, it'll automatically come right back up. Our container name here is Shlink database. Again, we've got some environment variables of the root password. Change that. The database, the actual database name, the database user, and the database password. Again, whatever you change here, make sure you change up in the back end, the Shlink image up here. Make sure that all of those variables line up. And then, of course, our volume here, we've got home/docker/Shlink. I'm actually going to add one more thing to that. I'm just going to call it /db. I don't know why I didn't do that before, but here we are. And of course, that is mapped to varlib MySQL. You can map this left half wherever you need to map it on your server. You may not want to map it there, and that's fine. Put it wherever you need to. Below that, of course, we've got our web client, and this is going to be the Shlink.io Shlink web client. Of course, a restart policy again of always, a container name of Shlink GUI. We've got some volumes, or a volume here rather, of home docker Shlink / servers.json. Now, normally you would have to create that file on most any other service I've ever deployed that required a file like this. However, these guys were awesome, and wherever you put that, it will automatically generate that file right there. So don't worry about having to generate that file on your own or creating that file or whatever. This system will do it for you. And of course, you can map this again wherever you need to map it. Just make sure that that part ends in servers.json. It'll handle the rest. And then, of course, this depends on Shlink. Of course, up here, our actual service. And then we're on ports 8081 over to 80. You can map this wherever, that left side, that 8081. You can put that basically wherever you'd like to put it, whatever port, I guess. But once you're happy with all of this, once you're content with all of this, what we're going to do is click on deploy the stack. Of course, mine says update. Yours will say deploy. We'll click update. We're going to give this a second to do its thing. And here we go. Now we've got 3 containers running, our backend, our database, and our GUI. We see no ports over here on our backend. Give it a minute. It's coming up still. In fact, if we open this up, we'll see, oops, the connection was refused. So it's waiting for the database to come up at this point. There it goes. So now it is updating the database, generating proxies, clearing entities cache, and it's downloading the Geolite 2 database file. That is what it's downloading from MaxMind. That's why we needed that API key. This way it can kind of sort your information to tell us where our clicks are coming from. Here we've got all of our workers up and running. It's just going to generate those as needed. So that part is up and running. We're good to go on the back end. So we'll come back. Now we have ports here. Our database, of course, is up and running. We saw that the back end wouldn't connect until the database was up and running. So it's done everything there. And of course, now we've got our Shlink GUI here. And if we look at the logs, it says started worker process. So that's good to go as well. We can click right here on our port. Or if we have a domain name set up, we can access it via that as well. I'm just going to access this on my local IP address for right now. Okay, so here we are on our new instance, and it says add a server. So here we're just going to name this Shlink. Of course, you could name this whatever. This is just to identify, more than anything, if you've got multiple setups, you can just identify each individual server with a different name. Below that, we've got a URL. So this is going to be we're going to do HTTPS, link.dnb.wtf, and then we need this API key right here. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of drag this off to the side a little bit. I'm going to pop over to my terminal window here. I've got this set up in Proxmox, so that's why we're seeing it here. If you were to set this up on any bare metal server, Open Media Vault, whatever, you could just SSH into it more easily. But this is what I'm doing. So what I want to do once I'm here is run this script. This is docker exec Shlink backend, and then we're just going to generate an API key. That's all this command is doing, and that's going to give us that authentication key that we need for our backend to talk to our front end. So we're going to go ahead and hit enter. We're going to give it a second. There is our generated API key. So we're just going to highlight it. We're going to copy it. We're going to go ahead and paste that in, and we're going to say create server. And there we go. Now we're up and running. Again, we are on an IP address right here, but we're going to call this, we're just going to do https reddit.com/new, and we'll just call it Reddit and then social, right? And then we can click save, and then we can copy this, open that in a new tab. So just like that, now we've got our Shlink instance set up with a front end, a back end, and a database. And of course, we've got our public front end on a domain name, and we've managed to keep our administrative back end on an internal IP address versus putting it out on a public URL that just anybody could access, just for a little extra security. Of course, like I mentioned before, you could put this on a public URL if you wanted to, but just make sure that you do a good job of securing it either via username and password, IP address, email authentication, whatever your form of protecting yourself online is for these things. Do that if you need to put the admin area on the internet. But with that said, that kind of wraps up everything I wanted to talk about in this video. Of course, as always, everything will be linked in the description down below so that you can get this set up for yourself if you'd like to do that. Let me know in the comment section if there are any containers that you think I should take a look at. I'd be happy to do that. Of course, Shlink was one that kept coming up here over the past couple of months, and I'm actually really glad that you guys brought it to my attention so that I could take a look and then share it with those of you who aren't familiar with Shlink. So again, everything in the description down below. If you'd like to get access to my content with no ads, that's no baked-in ads, that's no YouTube ads, no ads, just down to the nitty-gritty for the most part, other than my rambling stupid face, you can support me over on Patreon. You can become a channel member or join dbtech.fans and get access to my content with no ads for as little as $1 a month. Again, links to all of that will be in the description as well. But I think with that said, I'm going to get out of here. I do want to thank you guys for spending a few minutes of your day with me today, and I'll talk to you in the next video.